Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's training industry webinar, Meet Learner and Stakeholder Needs in 2024 with Extensible Learning, sponsored by Adobe. I'm Avery Vogt, Events Coordinator at Training Industry, and I'm so happy you could join us. Before we get started, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speakers and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to chat comments into the chat window and submit questions in your Q&A window. We will address all comments and questions throughout the event or at the end of our program during our Q&A section. We also encourage you to share the information you received today with your colleagues and network via social media. Please follow @Adobe and hashtag TI webinars so we're able to track your contribution to the conversation. When the program ends, you'll receive a short evaluation survey, and we would greatly welcome your feedback. As always, today's webinar will be recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will be receiving a follow-up email from us that will include a link to the on-demand program for you to share with your team. If this is your first webinar with us, a special welcome goes out to you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's webinar, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, courses, research reports, and our podcast. Make Training Industry your go-to resource for learning solutions. Visit trainingindustry.com to learn more. And now to get started, let me introduce you to today's speakers, Jamal Watkins and Graham Bell. Jamal has an extensive career as a learning and development practitioner and leader for approximately 25 years. During this time, Jamal has become adept at influencing business processes by driving business results through the use of blended learning and human capital management. His professional journey continues to lead to opportunities to partner with key stakeholders that influence employees, customers towards achieving business goals. His professional passion continues to blend learning, talent principles with enabling technologies. And we have Graham Bell, who is a software development manager at Amazon. Graham is an experienced software engineer with 8+ years in a technical lead position, developing back-end systems, server applications, web apps, and mobile apps on multiple platforms. Jamal and Graham, we're so happy to have you today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Avery. I appreciate the warm handoff and the warm welcome, and as many of the participants alluded to in the chat, the video is awesome. So that was a good way to start the session. Welcome everyone. We have a pretty good sized group here today, and more folks that are joining. As Avery explained, I am Jamal Watkins, a learning evangelist with Adobe, and we're here today to discuss meeting learner and stakeholder needs in 2024 with extensible learning. Now, we all know that the scope and the influence of training, it continues to expand, right? So it includes employers, it includes employees, I should say, it includes partners, customers, suppliers, just about anyone who helps your business grow. But the learning needs for your internal stakeholders, they're different than the learning needs for external learners. Right? The million-dollar question that we all want to know is, how do you enable internal and external stakeholders while meeting their diverse needs? The diverse needs can include different geographical locations, language differences, cultural nuances, so on and so forth. So in today's session, Graham and I will talk through the importance of extensibility of learning programs, how the selection of learning tools impact extensibility, using automation and AI to make extensibility easy for organizations. And finally, how do learning technologies need to work within a broader tech ecosystem for maximum impact? And as Avery alluded to earlier, I'm joined here today by Graham Bell, software development manager for Amazon Flex. And I'm going to give a little bit of background into his day-to-day responsibilities. He leads several tech teams that are related to delivering learning content and resources for drivers worldwide, as well as ingesting and analyzing signals for driver deliveries and challenges. And Graham's goals and his team's goals are to maximize Amazon drivers' readiness and experiences while ensuring a top in-class customer experience from the time that a customer places an order on Amazon.com to the time that it lands in the customer's hands. Now, before we actually get started into our session here today, I have a poll. Avery, if you don't mind bringing up the poll, I want to get a better understanding from the audience of what types of learner audiences do you currently support? Are they internal? Are they external? Are they both? We just want to get a better sense of the type of support that you're currently embarked on today. And, that may set up things well for what you're going to hear from Graham and myself during today's session. So we'll give it about another 30 seconds. See everyone's response, and then we'll go ahead and kick off today's session.
All right, everyone, now is your time. Be sure to answer our poll question. I'll give you all about 5 more seconds here, and then I'll show results. And here we go.
Perfect. This is exactly what I anticipated, that the majority of us support an internal audience. Graham is smiling. I don't think he's surprised either. We have about 14% that do support external, and then we have a really healthy number that does support both, right? So that really does align with the fact that we all know that the need for learning is not just limited to internal, and many of us are charged with having to support internal and external audiences. So with that said, that's a really good setup. Thank you for that, Avery. Is we want to actually now spend a little bit of time defining the scope of the audience that Graham currently supports today at Amazon. And Graham, can you define the different learners that you currently support and work with and what they're responsible for?
Yep. Yes. And thank you for having me today. And also thanks to Avery for getting this all set up and facilitated. Yes. So my team, one of the teams that I work with and lead, we provide learning content to our drivers. So when you think about who are the drivers that are delivering packages for Amazon, you typically think it's just there's one group of drivers, they pick up packages from a warehouse and drop it off at somebody's house. But we actually have a bunch of different organizations and groups for how we think about drivers and the different types of drivers. The two biggest ones we have at Amazon are our traditional delivery fleets, where we will partner with some sort of delivery company or organization. So you can almost kind of think of it kind of like a taxi cab company where they have a fleet of vehicles and we work with them and get their help for delivering packages. And then the other big one that we have is our flex delivery program. And that's a little bit more, I like to think of it more like Uber style, where anybody with a car, you can go through a process to get onboarded and register to start delivering packages on your own schedule. And we have a few other smaller programs specializing in different types of deliveries or different types of programs or regions or whatever. But those are the two big ones that do the bulk of our deliveries. And so across Amazon, I'm not the only team providing learning content to them. There are a bunch. Amazon's very big. There's a lot of teams here. But we are the only team, as far as I'm aware of, that is delivering learning content across these different organizations and different types of driver programs. In fact, even within our flex delivery, our gig workers, there really isn't much other learning content out there. Our team is really responsible for the vast bulk of that information and learning content that our gig workers, our flex drivers get. And so we have a very large scope, a lot of different types of drivers. The gig delivery drivers are more in the external field, so they're not really Amazon employees. The traditional delivery fleets that we work with, kind of a gray area, kind of internal. They're not technically our employees. They technically work for those delivery companies we partner with, but we do try to treat them like employees in certain aspects in how we give them support and learning content. So my team has to really kind of think about the whole spectrum of both internal and external and a whole lot of different scenarios and edge cases.
You just summed up basically probably the complexities of the entire L&D community, right? With respect to really what we're faced with really addressing those differences, but actually really giving tangible examples into the different roles, the different jobs that we can all identify with, right? Whether it be professionally or personally. I mean, I think all of us use Amazon. So that's a really great illustration of exactly what you're faced with and how you're trying to address those challenges. So what do you think are the similarities between the traditional learners that you support and your gig workers, the external learners?
So I think in terms of similarities, they want to have resources. They want to be able to look up information on their own, get help when they need to. We have other mechanisms that people can get help. So we do have, they can call in or email us or contact us in a variety of ways, but you really want to empower your learners to really go and be able to get content whenever they want, wherever they are. And so for us, that's meant looking at different mediums. So we look at what can we deliver to them mobilely. We look at what can we deliver for desktop, what can we support for both. At the end of the day, you don't like nobody likes to be forced to sit down and have to be like, I have to sit down and do all this learning content. It's really, we want to be as flexible and give them that power to get what they need when they need it.
What would you say are the differences between the traditional workers and the gig workers?
The differences I would say is that with the traditional workers, they are, it's more like it is a job for them. So they are working almost every day or whatever their schedule is. They are usually doing longer shifts to fill out the day. And so it's harder to find that extra time where they could consume some of that learning content, whether it's optional or mandatory. Whereas with the gig workers, the whole idea is being gig is you have that flexibility. That's why we call it the flex program. You can work how often, whenever you want. If you want to do shorter routes, if you want to do longer routes, you want to do mornings, evenings, weekdays, weekends, you want to work every day, you want to work once a week, once a month. It's whatever schedule works for you. And so there's a lot more flexibility around them having that access to that time to go and get that content either before or after their routes, whenever they need it, whenever they run into issues and they want to find some answers. So thinking about those different schedules and really kind of trying to put yourself in those learners' shoes and understand what works for them and what doesn't work for them.
That's a really great example of the importance of accessibility, right? Really being able to meet the learner, meet the worker where they are, whether they are a traditional learner, a traditional worker, a gig worker, or an external learner. So I really appreciate that detail. Now, can you tell us a little bit about why it's critical to engage and keep gig workers updated within your business?
Yeah. So gig workers, like I said, they are one of our big resources in terms of getting our packages delivered. And so one of our goals at Amazon is we want to keep growing our business. We want to get, we have X packages being delivered to every city, state, country all the time. If we delivered X million packages to Chicago this year, we want to increase that. We'd like to increase that by a certain percentage over the next year. And so we always want to have our customers happy and wanting to be satisfied with our service and making sure that nobody wants to be told I'm getting a package today and then I get it a week later. We want to keep our customers happy. The other scenario is we also want to keep them updated on new programs. So we're always experimenting with new ways that we can serve our customers, new type of things that we can deliver, new programs, new partnerships. Some of them are very targeted at specific regions or countries. Some are more of an experiment to see if it's something that'll get traction. And so when we're doing a lot of these newer programs, it is also important that we make sure that we are getting the best customer experience, that we're giving the program the best chance of success as we can. And so the flip side to that is not only do we have to worry about our customers, the ones buying packages off Amazon, and keeping them happy and making sure they're getting their packages on time, we also have to think about the delivery people as our customers as well. We want to keep them happy. We want them to keep delivering packages. With gig work, it is flexible. You can work whatever schedule you want. You're not really as locked in. And so if you're a gig worker and you're not happy and you're frustrated, you're going to stop doing it. You're going to switch to other gig work or do something else with your time. It's your time. You can use it however you want. And so for us, we want to keep them updated on what's going on, make sure they're aware of what are the businesses, what's the work we're doing. And that gets especially true for our newer gig drivers. Well, if you think about a traditional employee, you want to give them as much success as possible. You want to have them aware of as much as possible. But for gig, it's extra so because we want them to make sure they're having the best first day possible. The first time they deliver a route with us, the first week, the first month, we want them to have the best experience themselves. Because if they're frustrated, if they're having challenges, if they feel they're not getting the support they need, they're going to stop. And we don't want to have to go through a lot of churn. We want to keep our drivers happy, keep them engaged, keep them working with us, delivering as much for us as we can as long as possible.
And that continuity that you just mentioned of keeping them happy, keeping them engaged, keeping them with Amazon and working with Amazon, how does that impact the growth, the overall growth strategy, and how does that align?
Yeah, so in terms of our drivers, what I like to kind of think about is not only do we need to have, we do a lot of math and science around trying to predict how many packages we're going to be delivering at every country, state, region, city, neighborhood every year. And we want to make sure we are keeping our promises of people are getting their packages on time, whether it's 2-day delivery, same-day delivery, whatever that is. And to do that, we need to have our drivers. We need to have them there ready, available to help us deliver those packages. We can't just rely on the traditional drivers for everything. That's where Flex really comes in a lot to help make sure we're meeting our goals. And so in order to grow our business, we need to have the drivers and we need to keep the drivers. If our drivers are not happy, our gig workers are not satisfied with their jobs, they're having frustrations or challenges, and they decide to do something else, then we are now having to worry about, okay, how quickly can we get more drivers trained up and make sure that we can keep to our customers' needs and getting our packages delivered on time. And that gets especially true at certain times of the year. So, we have a few big events of the year. We have our Prime Day, usually in early Q3. We have the last 6-8 weeks of the year. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, that whole period is sort of our big time of the year where we're really delivering the most packages. And so that's where we're really worried about how do we make sure we're really prepared for that and we really have enough drivers to help us meet the demand that's going to be coming in. And so making sure we can quickly increase our driver pool, get more gig workers onboarded, increase maybe more of those partner fleets we work with to really make sure that we can keep to our promises and keep our customers happy.
So Graham, you're in a safe space here. You have a lot of loyal. I'm looking at the chat. Loyal Amazonians, right, and loyal customers, right, to Amazon. So, what would you say are the key challenges that you've been faced with in trying to deliver learning programs to the gig workers and your external learners?
So I think there's been a few challenges. One of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure we are driver agnostic. So while gig workers, the Flex program is a big focus of my organization, we want to make sure that whatever we're building works for all of the drivers. We don't want to be tailoring anything too exclusive. We want to be kind of driver agnostic. Along those lines, for the gig workers, we are in more than just the US. We have multiple countries around the world. and we're always expanding every year. And as you go to those new regions, there's different cultures, different expectations, it's a different environment. And so the strategy you have for how do I structure my content, what sort of engagement level am I expecting, how do I get that engagement? It can change country to country. And so you really have to, again, put yourself in the learner's shoes, think about what's their expectations, what are they used to? And then I think the other challenge that kind of stems off of that is the localization and thinking about not only do I get the right training content, but what is the language diversity among that country? I can't just do English worldwide, obviously. And so I need to think about, okay, not only do I need to have training content, what languages do I need to have it translated for? Is there something that, a certain program in one country that's not in another, or something that's exclusive to that country or that region or that group? And how do I kind of try to not necessarily personalize it all the way at a learner level, but at least personalize it to the learner's group or culture?
That's wonderful. I just looked at the chat really quickly, and there was a question about what is a gig worker, and I just wanted to take a quick step back and just define that during the session today, we're actually using the term gig worker, external learner, interchangeably, right? So the gig workers are how Graham and Amazon actually defines that external learner. So I wanted to make sure that we were all level set there. But I appreciate Graham. I hope I didn't disrupt your thought process there. I had a follow-up question with respect to the key challenges and how you're addressing it. What are the short-term? What's the short-term impact, and how does the impact? What impact does it have on your organization, right, in the short term?
Yeah, I would say in the short term, so like as I was saying, we really want to make sure our drivers are having that first good experience early on. And so if we have content that is, if we're missing content or something's not as detailed as it needs to be, or it's not giving the information the drivers need, we can very quickly create an early bad experience for our gig drivers, and lose out on them. Which can be very dangerous in the critical times of the year, like the Prime Day and Black Friday and Christmas period. And so we really want to make sure that we have our content updated as we're going into those critical periods. We want to make sure we're really setting it up to make sure not only are we growing our driver pools, but we're making sure they're prepared, they're ready, they're good, and that if we get them onboarded now for ahead of Black Friday and Christmas and the whole period, they're going to stick through the whole thing. That's kind of the one danger is they can sign up, they can start delivering packages, but there's nothing forcing them to work every day, every week. They can decide to just kind of pause and take a break whenever they want. So we want to really make sure that they are continuing to work as much as possible, picking up as many routes as possible, and happy with the work they're doing. And then that sort of feeds into the long term of that business. As we get that short-term impact, we start to see, are we being as successful as possible during critical times? Are we being as successful as possible with new programs, new deliveries, new things, new partnerships? Will that help the long-term business continue to grow year over year?
I appreciate the level setting, the audience giving us. I mean, we all have a certain level of familiarity with how Amazon works from a personal perspective, but you're really giving us some insight into how you currently support the magic, right, behind the scenes is really helpful. Now, with that said, Avery, we have time for our second poll, our second and final poll, where I want to get a greater sense from the audience on what types of technologies are you currently using today to support your learning initiatives, right? So there are a number of options here. You can select as many of them as you want. Learning management system, learning experience platforms, content management systems, content authoring tools, virtual meeting tools, data visualization. Just want to get a sense of what's the makeup of the tools that you're currently using today. And we're going to give Graham the opportunity to actually really give us a glimpse into the tools that Amazon and his team are currently using today, how they're leveraging Adobe Learning Manager, and really getting into a little bit more detail as it relates to the technology ecosystem. So we'll give it about another 10 seconds, and we'll take a look at the results really quickly.
All right, everyone, just a few more seconds here. I'll count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I will share those results.
Perfect. So it looks like we basically almost have the entire audience covered with leveraging a learning management system today. No judgment into which learning management system, but we are all using one just about. Learning experience platforms, content management system is actually a little bit higher than I actually thought. Content authoring tools, virtual meeting tools at 76%. That's really interesting. That's almost virtual meeting tools are almost keeping pace with learning management systems today. And data visualization, that's also a really good, healthy number, 22%. So really being able to turn your data into information is always a really good thing. So with that said, Graham, really interested in getting your responses to the second half of our presentation today and drilling down to more detail with respect to given your large learner population that you need to engage with. What kind of challenges have you encountered so far with technology?
Yeah, so I think our journey through technology as we face various challenges is a bit interesting. I kind of almost divided up into 3 phases. So we actually didn't have a very large and vast audience in the beginning, despite when people think big tech does not mean we always move super fast. We're not as big and fast as everyone thinks, and so trying to come in and have like a massive sweeping, we're going to change the way we do learning content, the way we're going to do XYZ, it's really hard to pull off, and it usually takes many years to pull off. And so what we were focusing on is we kind of wanted to start really small and build iteratively. And so we actually even just started off some of our learning content as pretty much just a small experiment with a small group of our gig drivers where before we started, they had almost nothing. They really only had the option of either contacting one of our support lines or going to social media and posting on Reddit or Twitter to get help. There wasn't really that learning content really available to them. And so we started to look at what can we start with and kind of look at where the immediate need is. What are the things that we're constantly seeing our customers, our drivers complaining about or having questions about or being confused about. And so we started very small and we looked at what is the MVP, what is the quickest, easiest, smallest thing we can get out the door to start helping our customers. And so we built our own internal tech as we do at Amazon and looked at what is just the simplest solution to get learning content to our gig drivers. And got some feedback and they loved it. It was a lot of what they'd been looking for. It was nice to finally get some of that support and information they had needed. And so from there, we just sort of started to slowly expand and iterate, adding a little bit more content over time, expanding it to more and more drivers, and then starting to look at, can we start to do the same thing beyond the gig drivers? And that's where we started to look at what are some groups of those traditional drivers that we can make the content available to. We're not trying to replace anything out there. There's a lot of other teams providing other training and content to them, but we wanted to just kind of, again, provide a resource, provide a place that they can go and look up information whenever they want. And so as we kept expanding, we then started to think about, okay, how do we move beyond our borders of the US? How do we start to think about other drivers worldwide and other driver groups? And as we kept expanding, we sort of hit a critical problem because we had sort of built this quick MVP solution ourselves internally. It meant that our team of engineers owned everything, including the content updates. And so as we worked with different teams and they had content they wanted to get to, learning content to the drivers, we were the bottleneck. we had to be the ones to go in and tweak the databases and upload to different data buckets and reset caches and XYZ. And our engineers were starting, our engineers over time had less and less time to actually update content, and the demand to update content was increasing exponentially. Our content changes were growing in multiple dimensions. We were trying to add more articles, more content for our existing drivers. We were trying to expand to more countries. We were trying to expand to more driver programs. We were trying to add more language support and more translations. And it just hit a critical point where we couldn't keep up with everything. And so that sort of brought us to our second phase, where we started to look at how do we separate the ownership of the tech that delivers the content and the content teams that actually create and manage the content. And we started to move into a CMS. And we looked at what are some different CMSs, what are some solutions we can do. Using the Adobe Experience Manager was one of the ones we looked at to say, how do we set this up so that we can give our content teams, because we work with multiple teams around the world, all sorts of people, give them the ability to update, add and remove and change whatever they want, whenever they want, while still integrating with our existing products, ensuring we're protecting the drivers, making sure the content is good, there's nothing broken, we're getting it to them as quick as possible in the format that they're used to. And sort of that was our second phase, as we started to look at how do we use these systems to help us separate that out so that our engineers can focus on engineering, on building the tech. And then that helped us to continue to expand. We kept growing, and then we started to look at, okay, how do we get more types of content for our drivers? Up until now, it's been very much static content, some articles, some videos. We want to move into the more interactive e-learning and more engagement with our drivers. That was something that we had seen a lot of drivers asking for. It's something we've done a couple experiments with and gotten some really positive feedback. And we knew that, not everybody wants to just sit there watching a video or reading an article all day. They want to have something more engaging. And so that's where we started to look at leveraging an LMS, and we decided to use the Adobe Learning Manager. And so that's where we're looking at, we needed another solution, not to replace our existing tech, but to complement it, to provide different types of learning content and different medias that we can get to our drivers, while still integrating it with our existing products, integrating it with our CMS, and really making it one cohesive learning product system for our drivers, for our customers.
That's a really interesting three-phased approach. So as your business needs grew, as your audience grew, you had to expand your learning tech stack or your tech stack, find the appropriate technology, the appropriate solutions to really align with that, meet the workers where they are, meet the learners where they are as well, whether it be internal, whether it be external, but also addressing the multifaceted external needs of that gig driver, that gig worker, or that external learner. Say I'm being consistent with respect to trying to define what the gig worker, gig driver, external learner is, right? Now, what are the key features in Learning Manager that makes it easy or makes it simpler to drive extensibility of learning and allows you to engage with your learner audience that aligns with the business?
Yeah, so when looking at which LMS we wanted to use, the feature set was very important. We had a very long list of business requirements and use cases that we needed to support. From ALM, I would say the ones that we are probably using the most, number one would have to be the APIs. We are not only having customers potentially logging directly into ALM and learning content directly from it, we have our own products that we're integrating with it. And to do that, we heavily leverage the APIs. ALM has a very extensive ability of learner APIs. So pretty much anything a learner can do through the ALM website tool, can be done through the APIs. And so that gives us the ability to integrate and build whatever products we need to, and create whatever sort of interactions we want with our customers, and get it to them however we want to, whether it's through our own desktop apps, our own mobile apps, our own XYZ. So the APIs are definitely number one. Beyond that, I would say we're heavily leveraging multi-SSO as our different driver programs, and not just those two big groups, but we have other groups as well. Depending on which program you're in, which country you're in, whether you're an internal Amazon content author, we have all sorts of different SSO endpoints. And so being able to configure that and make sure we're securely and reliably authenticating our users, getting them logged in, getting them set up is really important. We have a very complex audience of customers. So we are heavily leveraging catalogs, custom user groups, custom roles. We're really almost in the sense trying to look at, what is potentially 10 different ALM products merged into one, and how do we support everybody all at once? And so that was a really challenging problem for us to solve in thinking about when we use ALM or we use any sort of LMS. How do we structure everything to support our needs? The needs we have today are very complex. There's a very wide range of users and situations and relationships. But we know there's going to be even more next year. Trying to think about not just what's my problems today, but how do I keep this flexible enough and robust enough, and configuring my catalogs and content folders and permissions and everything, so that we can continue to scale it as we work with more programs and more countries and more lines of business and more user groups and driver groups and XYZ, has been a big focus for us for a while.
And I would think in supporting all those different variations of defining different learner audiences, defining different learning curricula, learning plans, and learning assignments, but also finding a way to make it efficient for the administrators and the program managers that have to manage the content as well, that's being served up to the gig workers or the traditional workers as well, is extremely important. Are you finding that you've gained efficiencies in helping the administrators and your program managers become a bit more efficient in being able to anticipate what the organizational needs will be in the short term?
I think we have, we are always engaging with new groups, and as we've worked with them to better, part of setting up this whole infrastructure is really going deep with them and understanding what are their needs. Again, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, not just the learner's shoes, but now we have to think about how do we put ourselves in our content author's shoes. This content team over here that I'm dealing with for a certain group of drivers might have a completely different mindset and strategy and approach to a couple other content teams that I'm working with, and what are their needs and wants and future goals, and what are their visions of where it's going, and how do I support everybody while at the same time trying to have that sort of driver, country, program agnostic, consistent experience and solution that works for everybody. Is the tough balance.
It's a tough balance. It's definitely an enviable task, but not an easy one, right? Are there localization requirements that you need to address, or that are present within the organization?
There are. So in terms of, again, in terms of just straight up which translations we want to support, what languages we want to support, it really does come down to what are our customers using. We can't support everything, but we do want to look at what are they using. So if a large population, large percentage of our drivers in a certain country are setting their phones to a certain language, we're like, okay, that's a key language that a lot of people are using. We probably want to support that. Beyond that, where it gets more tricky is every country is different in terms of what they do and how they do it. So certain programs, Whole Foods, we work with Whole Foods, we deliver for Whole Foods. Whole Foods doesn't exist in other countries, so content about it doesn't make sense over in other countries. But there might be something else over there similar to it that we do, and really thinking about how do we make sure we're not talking about a program or something that's only that's in a different country and not for that group of drivers. And then beyond that too is even just some of the terminology, the way we talk about stuff, the way we call things. It could be different in other countries, could be different expectations, a different culture, different legal compliance. So we always have to be careful about how much can we reuse content across different driver groups or different countries, and how much, what has to really be personalized and customized for each of them.
That's really important in that you gave a really good example of the differences between translating, but also addressing the true localization and the cultural differences and those cultural nuances that we discussed at the beginning of the call, right? That's really what impacts the adoption, how much traction you can get with those respective audiences, in making sure that the first impression was a lasting impression and really appropriate for the group that's going to be consuming the content. And I know that's not an easy thing to do, and that's something that you probably have to continue to refine. As you alluded to, you're not going to get it right the very first time, but you're continuing to work with other groups to get an understanding of not only how they're currently using the content or leveraging the content, but what are their emerging business needs, right? And what their emerging learning needs may be as well. Is there anything that you want to add to that, that you haven't already addressed, that you want to share with the group, just with respect to how frequently you are meeting with the other content teams to really get a better understanding of what their needs will be going forward?
Yeah, I think we do try to meet with them regularly. We do different planning sessions throughout the year, and trying to understand what are we going to do next. As I said, like, we're not trying to boil the ocean and build the perfect product from day one. We take a very iterative approach, and so we try to just kind of piecemeal add on a little bit more content, a new type of content, a new feature to support the content, a new product to integrate with the content, little bit at a time over time. And as part of iterative development, feedback is a critical piece. So we want to constantly be looking at what's working, what's not working, and not just in terms of the products and features, but also the content itself. Is there something that got a bad translation? Is there something that's vague and not as informative as our drivers would like? Is there something that's maybe missing? Getting the feedback on both the tech for us and the feedback on the content for the content teams is an important piece to make sure that everything is iteratively improving over time.
Now, I think we have time for maybe two more questions, Grant, and I think I'm saving the best for last, right? So when it comes to addressing a diverse set of learners, what kind of challenges do you see in creating and then delivering the content to those learners?
Yeah, I guess expanding on the whole differences of different groups in different countries and different cultures is kind of what I would say are the big challenges. From there, we've talked about gig workers have a lot more flexibility to consume content anytime, whereas our traditional delivery folks do not. We look at different forms of content. So we've had a lot of static content. In the beginning, it was very simple text articles and videos and images. And we're starting to get more into the e-learning interactive training, or well, not training, but more just learning content. But even within that, within just an LMS, there's a wide diversity of content that we have to think about. Some groups, some teams prefer to have very lengthy, detailed courses and learning paths. Some prefer more of the micro-learning, very quick, easy sessions. You can get in and do a quick 5-minute learning course. Some have other forms of supplementary content, or it might require some combination of the two. Some want to have the feedback through the LMS and have surveys to validate the people actually engaging and consuming the content. Some are less worried about that. And so again, just that flexibility, that ability to do as much as possible, your LMS can support as much as possible, can be tailored for different groups as much as possible, has been a bit of a challenge and an important feature of when we think about what is the learning content and what is the technology that's going to power it.
Absolutely. And having the technology to support your informal learning as well as your formal learning. And again, just meeting the learner where they're at, meeting the worker where they're at, and being able to have the option to access different types of content as it's appropriate for the respective role or the respective time, right? That is available to either the learner that's consuming it or the design team that may be designing it, right? That all has an impact, and that's all really important and all part of the solution. So really having a technology platform that can support one or the other or both is extremely important as well. So here's the last question. This is a two-part question, and it's related to metrics. So what are the metrics that you intend to track now, which couldn't be tracked in the past, right? Now that you're using Learning Manager and you have a continued evolved approach.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're looking to increase is the depth and complexity of the metrics around the engagement with the learners. Until now, being static articles and videos, there's not as much details. You don't get you don't get the full story of how they're interacting with the content. You really just kind of see high level, okay, this user looked at this article or this user looked at this video. But with an LMS and having more structured content, you get more granular information around, okay, how many drivers are actually not only doing this content and starting it, but actually completing it. Where are they dropping off? What percentage of the course or learning path are they getting through? Can we get more sophisticated metrics around, are they actually watching the whole video? Can we have the quizzes to validate, are they actually learning from the content and not just looking at it? And so we want to kind of make our metrics around the engagement more sophisticated and make sure that we really are getting those interactions and the drivers really, and our customers or drivers are really learning from the content that we're sharing with them.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I wanted to add to the second part of that question is, how do you think those metrics will help you to build impact amongst your learning audience in the future, right? And build impact in your organization?
I think it will improve our feedback. So metrics are feedback. It is a way of knowing, do drivers look at it? Do they go back and look at our content again in the future? Are they actually consuming it and completing our courses? And that'll give us a better idea of, are they actually engaging? From there, we want to look at how does it actually impact their experiences. So going back to the very beginning, we want our drivers to have the best first day possible. We want them to be happy. We want them to be successful the first day, the first month, the first, et cetera. And so from there, we can look at, are the drivers actually engaging in our content? And then is it actually making a difference in the work they do? Is it giving them less frustration, less mistakes, less challenges? Do they want to keep working with us longer and do more work with us and be more engaged in terms of the actual delivering packages for us? And so I think the two of them, as we get more metrics and more data, we can not only improve our content and make it better, but we can start to see, is this really driving the change, the bigger change that we want to see?
That's great, Graham. I appreciate you answering and all of the questions that I have on my list here today. And Avery, we tried to do our best to at least leave you with time to manage the Q&A session and the close out of the session accordingly. But thanks for your time today, and I appreciate the partnership, Graham.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you both. This has been really great. I do see we have some questions. So Katie has asked, how are you currently integrating AI into your learning experiences?
Yeah, I can't go too much into detail, but I will say that rather than focusing on just saying we want to have AI or Gen AI or the newest technology, we focus more on working backwards from the customer experience. So for us, it's less about what technology are we plugging in, and more about how are we making sure our drivers are looking at the right content. And so we're trying to have some smarter interactions and being able to make recommendations to them. So, if a driver is about to take on a new type of work they've never done before, it might be good to recommend them some content or articles about that work so that they know what they're getting into, and they're not going to have any of those frustrations or challenges. If we see that drivers are having certain frustrations or challenges, can we get them that content? Can we connect the dots so that we can improve their experiences and make it better next time? And so taking a step back and looking at the need, from there, we work backwards and say, how do we solve that need? Is it with AI? Is it with something else? And so that's what we're trying to do right now with our learning content.
And Avery, I'll add just a quick response to that question with respect to Adobe Learning Manager, in that Adobe Learning Manager does have integrated AI and machine learning. That is part of the learner recommendation. So in the event that you're looking for feedback with respect to, does the Adobe Learning Solution offer AI recommendations and logic, I just wanted to clarify that it currently does. How you leverage it exactly, to Graham's point, is all up to the relative how your use cases and how you're using it.
Awesome. Thank you both. Let's see here. We have another question. How do you inspire external learners, so cannot be mandatory learning, to engage with the content? Or is it mandatory for contract work?
It is not mandatory for our gig workers. The learning content we give them is always optional. Part of the nature of gig work and the expectations around it are that a gig worker is more independent. There's less hand-holding, there's less saying you have to do this training or this content by this date, and more of a, we're giving you resources, we're giving you opportunity to gain knowledge and learn and make your job easier and better. But it's really up to you. It's up to you to, at the end of the day, as a gig worker, it's on you to know how to unblock yourself, what to do when you're stuck or you have a challenge or a problem, whether that's through the learning content we give you, or you're contacting our customer, one of our support lines, or XYZ. So in terms of getting the content to them, what we like to kind of, again, think about is, it's really, we draw a very careful line between assignment and recommendation. So again, we can look at trying to recommend content to them. We can give them a nudge and say, hey, for these reasons, you might want to check out this content. It might help you, or you might find it useful. But at the end of the day, it's up to them to actually engage themselves. And so we kind of have to almost think about, how do we motivate them to engage? How do we give them that carrot to make them want to come and engage with the content? And sometimes it can be based off their experiences on the job and the work they're doing. And sometimes it can be based off of just the form of the content they want. And that's why we're always trying to expand to new media. Not everybody wants to sit through a video or read a lengthy article. Some prefer that more interactive. And so that's why we want to give that flexibility to our learners and give them that ability to learn in different medias.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Graham. We have a few more minutes here. Another question, does Adobe Learning Manager support other languages?
I'll go ahead and take that, Graham. It does support other languages. It's over 15 languages are currently supported, where the UI would actually change into that respective language on that learner profile. And as it relates to translating content within the courses itself, it doesn't translate the content, but it does translate the and localize the UI and the application itself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question. Do you currently leverage custom reporting and integrate it into other reporting tools?
So integration is important to us. We have not only our own products we've built ourselves, we have our own reporting systems and metrics analysis systems as well. And so looking at having that integration is important to us. But at the same time, ALM does have its own internal reports. And so again, we want to give that flexibility of if certain content authors or managers want to be able to go in and see those reports in ALM, they can. We're not stopping them. That's one option. If they prefer to go through our more internal reporting tools or our other internal teams need the data, we can integrate that and do that as well.
Yeah, I'll add to that really quickly, Avery, as Grant alluded to, Adobe Learning Manager does have standard reports, it does have custom reports. It also has a productized integration with Power BI. So if you're looking to actually do a bit more in your data visualization. And then as Grant mentioned earlier, where his team leverages the APIs, you can always leverage the APIs or export data to different FTP servers if you're using other third-party reporting tools and you want to take part in a bit more data visualization. So whatever your reporting solution is, to Graham's point, with actually leveraging the embedded reporting tools within Adobe, that's there. But if you want to take the data external, we do support that as well.
Yeah, I'd also say even APIs are a way to get some data if you really need to. Like the APIs they have there are very extensive. And so if there's really specific data that you're looking for that's not typically in reports, if it exists in ALM, you can probably get it through an API.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, sadly, we are just about out of time. So thank you both, Jamal and Graham, for your time today. It's been really awesome. Any last remarks for our audience before I close this out?
Are you going to do the honors with, if you have any questions about Adobe Learning Manager? I don't want to steal your thunder there, Avery. That was
yes, I put it in the chat. If you are interested in learning more, you can contact Learning Manager Sales at adobe.com.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to share some additional resources with you all before I close this out for today. I'd like to invite you all to join us for some upcoming training industry webinars this month. You can register now and watch past webinars at www.trainingindustry.com. All training industry webinars, including this one, are pre-qualified for a credit hour, SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. What is CPTM? It is the Certified Professional in Training Management program that assists you in developing core competencies that will empower you to manage the future training needs of your organization. You can participate in a virtual practicum from anywhere in the world. Find out more at trainingindustry.com/training. And I would love for you all to meet us in person here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the 2024 Training Industry Conference and Expo. TICE is where learning leaders like you gather to forge new professional connections, learn from each other, and address your most pressing learning challenges. Re-energize your learning initiatives at TICE 2024 next June. Advanced early bird registration is now open through the end of December. Learn more at tice2024.com. And one last reminder that an evaluation survey should have popped open in another tab in your browser, and we would greatly welcome your feedback. Thanks so much again to our speakers today, Jamal Watkins and Graham Bell, and our sponsor, Adobe. Thank you all for your time and attention, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. For our training industry, I'm Avery, and see you all soon.